The battle for Iowa. Democrats descend on the Hawkeye state, and it's turning into an amusement park ride for many candidates. The new ups and downs coming up next. We begin with details on the death of Jeffrey Epstein and the investigation into exactly how the wealthy financier died. Joining me now, Julie Brown, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter with the Miami Herald, and NBC's Ken Delaney, a national security and intelligence reporter. Ken, let's start with you. What more are we learning about Epstein's final night?
Morgan, multiple federal law enforcement officials have told NBC News that Epstein hanged himself and that there is no indication that foul play is suspected. He was housed in a special housing unit where there were bed sheets, there was a windowsill, there was a bedpost, so there were ample opportunities, our sources are telling us, for him to have committed suicide. But of course, the FBI and the Inspector General of the Justice Department are investigating after Attorney General said he was appalled that this could happen in federal custody. And I can tell you something else, Morgan. The rules called for checks to be made on inmates in that facility every 30 minutes. And what's being investigated now is whether those checks, in fact, happened every 30 minutes or whether Epstein was left alone for longer than that, Morgan.
But can you talk about those checks and something that I'm still confused on? Given the guidelines under which federal prisons operate, how unusual is it, Ken, would it have been to take Epstein off of a suicide watch just 6 days after an apparent attempt?
This is the big question, Morgan, that no one has been able to answer thus far. What we know is that the rules say that he would have had to have been evaluated face-to-face by the facility psychologist, a mental health evaluation, in order for him to have been taken off suicide watch. And our sources tell us that did happen. So the question is, did Jeffrey Epstein fool this person? There's many allegations that he fooled many people in his life for a long time. Was this the last person that he fooled in order to get taken off suicide watch? Because on suicide watch, Morgan, he would have been watched every second, and experts say there would have been almost no opportunity for him to have taken his own life.
Now, Julie, you had some brand new reporting on this, and in fact, the Manhattan U.S. attorney credited your work with getting the accusers to talk and really being helpful in securing that New York indictment. The headline of your piece today was "The Easy Way Out." So how does this reflect how the accusers feel about his death, Julie?
Well, they feel angry, shocked. Once again, they feel that that Epstein manipulated the system as he did all through the whole time this case was being investigated, starting in 2006. He managed to manipulate the entire criminal justice system all the way through his incarceration. So if he was able to persuade someone in the jail there to give him a favor, to take him off of suicide watch, I mean, that it's really not a surprise to the victims, because that's what he's done all these years.
You said it wasn't a surprise to the victims. Given your reporting, was it a surprise to you?
Well, when I say it wasn't a surprise, I mean, it's not a surprise looking back on, just looking at the fact that somehow he probably got some kind of allowance to get off of suicide watch, that part of it. I think everybody's shocked that he was able to execute it, that he should have probably been watched a little more carefully, at least since, his suicide watch was recently lifted. You would think that they would have been checking on him a little more closely.
Well, one of the women that you interviewed actually spoke to one of the Sunday shows. So let's take a little listen to that.
I really wanted justice. I really wanted to take up for what he did and to be put in jail or prison and have to sit there and think about what it is he exactly did to so many people.
Julie, given what you've learned, do you think the alleged victims will get any form of justice?
I sense that U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman in New York is pretty, resolute in his effort to find justice for these victims. So I certainly, with all the documents that were released the other day, there's a lot of angles for him to pursue. There is so much information in those documents, and we have thousands and thousands of more documents that are probably going to be released. There are so many threads of information and evidence and testimony and witnesses that are contained in those documents that he has a lot to work with there.
One of the most chilling pieces, Ken, that I heard was when one of the victims said that she was recruited. What's the likelihood that the victims will see the conspirators or even the co-conspirators held accountable?
Well, of course, we don't know for sure, but that seems to be what the U.S. Attorney in New York is saying, that the investigation will continue and that there is a question of conspiracy here, of whether anyone else is culpable in these crimes, Morgan. And that's certainly, if that's the case, the victims are certainly expecting to see some justice.
Ken, Julie, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate seeing you this afternoon. Also new this hour, Democratic presidential hopefuls are criticizing President Trump for retweeting a conspiracy theory